Welcome back to another episode of Starting Out, a podcast where we share our stories of starting out in this great big world. We talk about our highlights, trials and tribulations, and lessons we've learned along the way. So, as you are starting your journey, we hope you can learn from us. So, Cor, what's the topic for today?
For today's episode, this is a follow-up to one of our previous episodes earlier on. So if you missed part 1 of this journey, make sure you go back and listen to Digital Minimalism by Newport, book reflection, because we went through more theory-based topic as to why we are so digitally maximized and why we use certain technologies so much. We went on a 30-day digital detox, and we will be talking about how we felt, some things that we did, and overall, how did everything go after finishing the book and even after our digital detox? This episode is going to be how we challenged ourselves to stop those really bad habits or even excessive and prolonged screen time, endless scrolling, and just overall better and more efficient technology use that ultimately aligns with our values. In this book, Cal Newport outlined the 3 steps you can take for you to kind of go through your digital detox. Let us know, what is step number 1?
So step 1 is defining your technology rules. What was your technology rules?
Yeah, so for me, I set 2 rules for myself. The first one is around social media. So I essentially deleted Instagram from my phone just because before I found that when I looked back at my screen time, almost over 50% of my screen time was actually Instagram. So I knew something had to change for sure. And because of that, I could only check it for 30 minutes on Sunday because I didn't really want to go cold turkey just yet. I still wanted to sprinkle in a little bit of Instagram time for myself, but it was only 30 minutes. And then the app shuts down, like I'm not able to view it anymore. And my second technology rule is screen time. Because I'm working from home, I'm always looking at a laptop. I felt that my eyes were just so strained and just so tired all the time. So when it comes time to actual work from 9 to 5, I made sure not to just keep using my phone. So I kind of put my phone in a different room and then only use my laptop then. But then after 5 p.m., I would make sure if I finished all of my work and I've done all my tasks for the day, I would close my laptop, shut it off. So then I would either look at my iPad or look at my phone. Almost like I designated different technologies for different purposes at different times of days. So those are my 2 rules. How about your 2 rules? What did you set out to do?
Mine are like super similar. So my first one is concerning around social media as well. I deleted Instagram, Facebook, and pretty much every social app off of my phone. Basically, I could only check the desktop version, and any other app that was not a social media app, I basically removed it from the actual home screen so that the only way I actually could use that said app was by searching it. So basically getting rid of all the apps off my phone and to making it really hard for me to actually go look for something and actually use it. My second one is screen time as well. I said no laptops after work. This was also very aligned to what you were going through. It was just like so much prolonged screen time in front of the computer. So I was like, okay, well, I wanted to get rid of the guilt of not doing work after 6 p.m. So I was like, if I can't do it, everything has to be done by 6. And if it's not done by 6, well, I guess I has to do it tomorrow. So moving on to like the second step. So now we have defined our technology rules. We actually now have to take our 30-day break. And Cal Newport basically talks about like you have to fill this time with higher quality activities, meaning that these activities align with your value. They actually bring a lot more to your life. So what was your higher quality activities that you implemented during the 30 days?
I think for me, some of the higher quality activities that I implemented to really fill in my time is number 1, I downloaded Libby, but I absolutely love Libby. If you don't know what it is, highly encourage you just to check it out on the App Store. But essentially, you link your library card to it, and then you get to take out books and podcasts and audiobooks for anything, magazines even. So because of that, I essentially read so many more books than I would have if I was just constantly scrolling on my phone during my downtime if I'm not working. I also noticed that I went for a lot more walks outdoors, and instead of just constantly sitting and having my step count like close to 3,000, which is not great day to day, I decided I wanted to get out more, get some fresh air, and just to like have the sun hit my skin and everything, and just made me feel really good. So I also had more free time to really listen to different types of podcasts that I was always like, oh, this sounds so interesting, but I never really got the chance to actually sit down, or in this case, walk, and really have time for myself to listen to these podcasts and reflect. And then finally, my favorite one that I have to say is I actually got a Nintendo Switch a couple of months ago because I really wanted to spend time with the younger kids in my family, and I think that's something that I'm really glad I did, because I know like Nintendo Switch is not cheap at all. I totally understand that, and I'm really glad I invested in that, just because I'll talk about this in a bit, but one of my values is to really connect more with my family and to connect more with people that I really love. So I am really happy about those 3 higher quality activities.
Thanks for bringing up Libby, because Libby is one of my literal favorite apps. I highly encourage you to understand what kind of like social services are offered in your community. So where we are basically taxes fund into Libby, like because all the libraries are paying to get access to these books and podcasts and magazines and all these great things. So in the end, I actually read a lot more books. I also fell in love with magazines. I thought that they were really awesome because sometimes it's like books are sometimes too hard to read, but I think magazines were really awesome in terms of having pictures and having different topics like architecture and the New Yorker. Also, I drew a lot more on my iPad because now that I didn't have like my apps to scroll on, I really wanted to like draw. And then my other one is I walked also a lot more. I actually was so proud of this one. I actually walked for 25 days in a row. And I didn't break it until there was like a rainy day. Then I broke my 5-day streak. So you kind of touched on this, but when you were going through your 30-day break, how were you feeling? Did you see any like immediate changes in your mood? When you like reflect your 30 days was over, like did you feel like anything has changed?
That's a good question. I think when I was actually going through the 30-day, at first I felt a little bored, but I think they also talked about this in the book, whereby if you don't properly set up your higher quality activities, then feeling bored is definitely really, really common, just because you don't have anything valuable. So I felt a little bit of that at first because I didn't kind of know how to go about my day, because usually after 5 I'm like, yeah, let me just go on my phone, scroll until 6, and then it's like that's kind of the night. But for me, there's a little bit of adjusting for that, but I definitely felt the difference after my 30-day break, especially taking time off from Instagram. For me, for a long time, I felt a little bit of body image problems with myself. And this kind of stemmed, I would say, starting in 2nd and 3rd year of university or college. And I noticed that at that time, I was constantly scrolling on Instagram. And it wasn't even for memes anymore. It was more so I would compare myself to all the pictures that I saw. And like our listeners would know, it's like you really don't look at every photo and be like, everything's real, right? There's no edits. I think that's something that I learned about myself, and that when I'm on Instagram, I wouldn't really compare myself to whatever the female or whatever picture that I see in front of me, as opposed to in university where every single photo I'm like, okay, so like she has a big butt. How do I get a big butt? But it was really like surface level. It was more so like my physical image. But after that, I felt so much better about myself. I wasn't constantly comparing myself to other people anymore. And I just had enough time to reflect and actually be like, why do I want a big butt? Why do I want these unrealistic expectations that only Photoshop can give you?
Do you feel like you got a little bit more like mental clarity?
Yeah, I definitely think so, because you would think that, oh, only when I'm scrolling that I'm thinking about it, but I think even after, when you kind of stop scrolling and you're in bed, my mind goes to like, okay, so like tomorrow if I want a big butt, then like I need to eat this, I need to do this exercise, and then I need to do this treatment. And I think it takes up so much real estate space in my head that I never would have thought it was actually that much time I spent thinking about these things.
It's funny that you say that, because like if you ever go onto like your like social media usage and you're like, okay, this is only 4 hours of my time, you never think of like the extra 6 hours it like gets you during the day. As much as you think it's like in the app, this is only where it gets me. But thoughts are interesting, because like it always comes back, and it's starting to shift your mindset and distort your reality a little bit. Yeah, kind of like branching off of that is like, for me, it's like that uninterrupted thinking I find I got a lot in my 30-day break. To use social media as a crutch is a really awful way, because you stop daydreaming, you stop having your own thoughts. As much as we're like, I have my own thoughts, but it's like, no, not really, because like you spend so much time on it, and like you start to like mold your thoughts with the app. And then when you get off of the app, are you really you? Or are you like a fraction of Instagram and like Twitter or whatever? So I kind of liked it in that sense, where I was like, these are my thoughts. Or like allowing yourself to be bored, just like daydreaming and like not being really interrupted with like, and then someone else posted today, gotta look, right? You can actually go forth with that idea and keep thinking about it.
Yeah. Do you think with your uninterrupted thinking time, did you kind of jot down what you were thinking, and did you kind of put it into fruition?
So there's some thoughts where I was like, wow, like I should really start my business, or like I should really like do X, Y, and Z. But like, I think, I don't know, just like random stuff, right? Like even like back in the day, I was like, oh, I should go take a walk. And then for some reason, because the walk is hard to do, right? Because you have to get up, put your shoes on, go outside, be like, oh shoot, it's like sunny, should bring a hat. You know, like that is like a barrier. And like using social media as like a reflex of like, that's hard, now I'm gonna go, scroll. It's like that reflex of like trying to like not think of something that's hard, or trying to do something is hard. Then it becomes like, it gives you a little kick, it gives you a little serotonin boost. So we would love to be perfect and just be like, I don't use technology. So step 3 is reintroducing technology, and we had to answer 3 questions that Kyle Newport proposed, which was, when you introduce a technology, you're supposed to ask, does this technology directly support something I value? Is this technology the best way to support this value? How am I going to use this technology going forward to maximize its value and minimize its harm? So Cor, when you reintroduced your technology, which ones did you reintroduce? What did you do to like really make sure it was of value rather than of harm?
Yeah, so I kind of talked about this just a little bit beforehand, but what I more so introduced, not really reintroduced, was a Nintendo Switch. So I would say, to answer question 1, yes, getting this Nintendo Switch directly supports something I really value, just because I get to spend a lot more quality time with young ones in my family. And it's almost like I felt a little bad just because she is doing schooling online. So she, at this age, she should be like going out, like meeting classmates and stuff, and like going to like birthday parties or whatever. But just because we are in the midst still of a pandemic, for the past year and a half, she didn't really get the chance to meet new friends, play games with others. So I really thought that even though the age difference is huge, I still thought like the Nintendo Switch was something that we both had in common, and we both learned a little bit more about each other. And I would say this technology, so the Nintendo Switch, is one of the best ways to support this value, just because we're both going to be on our iPads or phones all the time regardless. So if we're already using screen time, we might as well be doing something together that actually just makes us both happy. happy. Why not just do it together and have fun with it? And I think moving forward, to make sure that I maximize the value but ultimately minimize the harms, we set a rule for ourselves where we only play the Switch on the weekends. Only when she finishes her homework and I finish all of my work. So making sure that none of this gets distracted from what we actually have to do day to day. And we only play for 1 hour together maximum. So after 1 hour, we kind of go upstairs, take a breather, eat some snacks, or like even go for a walk outside, because you don't really want to just be in the basement in the dark playing Animal Crossing for 8 hours straight.
I love how thought out this was. I love how you really took your 30 days, really reflected upon it. And then these 3 questions are so valuable because I feel like as the adult and showing how you create boundaries with someone younger sets them up on a much better path, because you can only lead by example, right? If you only spend an hour on it after you've done everything, so it never interferes with anything, and then you instill the good habit of taking breaks and doing something else, like going outside, reconnecting with nature, socializing after long periods of time, it helps so much in the long run. So for me, being creative is something I really value. When I feel like I am not being creative, or if I am stuck in a rut doing something over and over again, like scrolling or working for others and not doing something for myself, I think that goes against my values. So for those reasons, my iPad only has drawing related stuff. I don't have any of my Instagram, my Twitter, literally nothing. And it's purely for just creation. And I also have Libby on my iPad. So I feel like this helps because it gives a literal separation. The device is not going to be abused or any way because it only has things that make me creative or relaxes me in certain ways. So I'm essentially replacing my phone. And I think I even got rid of messages and stuff. So I'll never even try to text people on it. It's purely for creativity and to actually make sure I'm aligning with my values every time I go on it, and that there's absolutely no distractions.
I'm so glad to hear that you got rid of even the messaging app. I know how it's linked and how many messages is ding, ding, ding as you're trying to read in bed with Libby, and you're no, just go away. I actually recently did that as well.
Yay!
And if you may also have an iPad, perhaps, maybe this could also be something that you implement as well if you kind of want to keep things separate, where like you said, maybe you want to read with your iPad, but also on your phone, it's specifically more communication.
Yeah, honestly, I think one of the big things is just making sure you have an idea of how you're going to use it first. Why am I going to use this? Kind of helps a lot when you have distractions like that. You're oh, that's not the purpose of what I was going to use this for. So in the book, Cal Newport talks about spending alone time, and that solitude is something to be cherished. It's an essential part of life. So when you were going through your 30 days and post 30 days, when do you feel solitude?
I felt solitude when I actually had the chance to go out and go for these long walks, just because for almost half a year during the pandemic, I just felt so grumpy after work. I didn't really want to do anything. And I think that's partly because you're just immobile for almost 8 hours of the day, right? You're constantly sitting, you might have poor posture. So when I actually had the chance to actively say, no, I'm putting it in my calendar, I'm going for a 1 hour walk right after dinner. That was the time where sometimes I'm not even listening to a podcast. Sometimes I'm just out and about and just hearing the birds chirp and hearing the trees blow in the wind. Really, like you said, reconnecting with nature again. And I think kind of reconnecting me really allowed me to get that solitude again, where I wake up the next day and I'm ready to go. I'm refreshed, I'm rejuvenated, let's do this.
That's awesome. Yeah, walks are so essential. I feel if you keep it within your schedule and you make time for it, I feel it's such a good way of getting some solitude time for yourself. Mine is just lying down and thinking and journaling. I always liked just chilling, purely chilling, no distractions, no nothing. I'm not being distracted by anything. And usually I feel pretty relaxed when I do that because I feel I'm not obligated to do anything. So then I actually get to hear the thoughts in my head. And maybe that's terrifying to people, but you should definitely listen to your thoughts to see what's going on and what's up.
I guess on the other hand, so we talked about like solitude, but at the same time, building meaningful relationships and the connections still matter a lot. So moving forward, how do you think you're gonna kind of either pivot, or what will you introduce to make your relationships with your close friends, with your family, whoever else, just more meaningful and more valuable for yourself?
Good question. So I feel like to build more meaningful relationships, I try to like find things that I can do in like their physical realm. And it's kind of hard with COVID, but one thing I did for when you switched careers and basically accepted nursing school, I sent you flowers.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, and they like last about like a week or two, and they're always like sitting there. You can like, be reminded of me. And not like sending full-on gifts, but like trying to do stuff to make sure that you're thinking of them, or like even small gestures is like really, really awesome, because it's more than like just liking their photo or like sending a text message.
You said it doesn't even have to be monetary. You could write your friends like a really cute message on Facebook or wherever else. Just say like, I'm so proud of you for whatever you're doing right now. Literally anything you do, I feel like just shows your friends how grateful you are for them.
Oh, yes.
So thank you so much for sending me flowers. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, I was trying to make a surprise, and let's just say you got a text message from the florist and you were pretty scared because you were like, oh my god, what's going on? And I didn't get any confirmation of when she was gonna send it out.
Yeah, I thought I was getting scammed that day because I got a message, flowers are here in Chinese. So I was like, I'm checking my credit card to make sure there's no funky charges or anything. So how I make my relationships more meaningful is, instead of the typical like text message, I did it a little bit differently in the past couple of months. So instead of just using Facebook Messenger or text message, WhatsApp, whatever it may be, I wanted it to be more personal, and I tried to set up weekly or bi-weekly calls with my friends so I could actually hear their voice. And if that's not feasible, I tried to send voice notes whenever I can. And I feel like this way it's a little bit more personalized, and it just feels like they're actually there with me, right? Because I feel like with text messaging, you don't really see like their facial reaction, you don't see their body language and everything. This way, it really became more meaningful to me when I did have like the 1 hour where I was chatting with them. It felt like this is our time. It just felt so nice just to be able to talk to them again. And I think that's almost a direct substitute if they were actually there.
I really like that you mentioned calling and making voice notes, because I feel like sometimes you actually have to get a little creative. I love it when you give me a voice note, because then I'm like, oh my god, what spicy, juicy gossip did you hear about, or whatever? Or like, did something crazy happen? And I feel like, yeah, it's really hard with COVID to like do something like extraordinary, but I feel like these small touches really go a long way. So we've gone through our 30-day digital detox. We've obviously had some life-changing experiences. Are there any final thoughts you would like to give our audience?
For me, I think no matter who you are, I believe that everyone should try to analyze their screen time. So I analyzed it. I looked at my screen time. I was like, Instagram was a big issue. And then if you could kind of pinpoint where you might be having issues, or you might be feeling like poorly, or whatever it may be, try to pinpoint it to see like where exactly does that unhappiness comes from. Because for me, it ultimately came from Instagram. And I knew it was an issue, so I snipped out of my life. And it only comes back for 30 minutes on Sundays.
That's really good. You're taking responsibility of where your unhappiness comes from, and that is step one of becoming happy.
Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the big things that came out of this was, if I only have one life, why do I keep making excuses of why I don't do the things I like to do? I like to draw. I like to read. I want to start my own business. I have all these ideas and I have all these dreams and aspirations, but it always felt like the day has slipped out of my hands, or like the time is just gone. And like, I feel like this was such a great exercise to be like, oh, so this is where all your time has gone. I just feel like once you know where your time is going, you actually can make time for things now. You can actually budget properly. So I feel like this is a really great exercise to be like, make time for things you actually like to do, because life is going to just slip away like that if you just keep on scrolling. So we want to know if you actually read this book and if you actually gone through your own 30-day detox, or just like any changes that you've made in your life after hearing our experiences. I think there's great power of like sharing your experience and sharing your learnings. By no means this is like the one and only way to carry out your digital detox. We also made some modifications and adjustments. We didn't follow the rules to a T, but we still saw great benefits coming out of this little experiment that we did with ourselves. So we would love to hear what you've done and what your learnings are. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye! You have just been listening to the Starting Out podcast. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to rate and like the show. Also, leave us a review. It helps us a lot. To never miss an episode, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We love to hear from you. So if you want to chat with us, tweet us at Starting Out Pod. Links are in the description. As always, we are so excited for you to start out on your journey, all while listening to ours. See you in the next one.